My name is Holly. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Today we're going to make a tumbler with a vinyl and glitter and a Cricut machine. I am measuring a 16-ounce straight AF Mother Tumbler and trimming off the little excess white border on this beautiful vinyl from the Vinyl Cottage. I only had one piece of this. I have to go back and order some more because it's too pretty. I'm using my thumb to draw a little indentation into my vinyl so I can use that as a guide as I trim. And then I'm going to begin wrapping the vinyl around my tumbler, starting with the middle and pressing outward to make sure it gets a really straight fit. Before wrapping your vinyl, you want to make sure that you prep it. So I'm prepping by sanding down just to roughen up the stainless steel. And then I'm using rubbing alcohol and a paper towel to get rid of that excess debris. This is going to be a gift set, and so I am going to make a matching pen. I actually decided to do 2 pens instead of 1 because I wasn't sure which one I was going to like better. And then I am going to make a keychain. So I'm using a 3-inch keychain blank. I believe I got it from Amazon, and the pens I got from Hobby Lobby. So here's where I'm starting in the middle and wrapping the vinyl around my tumbler. And then I'm just going, you don't have to have any, there's not going to be any excess to trim off after you wrap it all the way around because you already measured. That's when I used my thumb to press down to give myself a guide when I cut, and you don't have any excess. So you don't have to worry about crooked lines. Just press it down from the middle, pushing outward, make sure it lies flat, pop any of the little air bubbles that you see in there and then press them down, and then your vinyl should be perfectly laid out. So same thing with the pens. I'm going to measure and then make sure that my vinyl goes all the way around and with a little bit of overlap. When applying such a small piece of vinyl to something round like pens, it's really easy if you just lay it down and then just roll your pen right onto it. It just grabs the adhesive and just wraps it perfectly around with no air bubbles and no issues, and that's it. It's super easy. For my 3-inch blank, I laid out the colors that I'm using, and Smitten was a really beautiful match. I'm painting the bottom of my tumbler first with some acrylic paint mixed with Flippin' Awesome. It took about 3 to 4 coats of paint. It probably would have been better if I spray painted before I applied my vinyl, but I wasn't really sure which color I wanted to use yet. So then I just had to, go ahead and paint the bottom. And I didn't want to use white because the Smitten glitter is chunky, and I didn't want any of the painted color to show through the glitter just in case I didn't get full coverage. I'm using the same Smitten glitter mixed with UV resin to apply my first coat over my 3-inch blank. I cured it for about 120 seconds under my UV lamp, and then I just let it sit until I was ready to apply the vinyl. And it just completely cures if you put it next to a window, or if you have, a really strong lamp in your room, like my overhead lamp that I use for recording. That actually helps cure it too. So it must have a little bit of UV light in that lamp. Once your keychain blank is completely cured, then you can go ahead and sand it. So you don't want to apply your vinyl over the top of it until you have a nice smooth surface. And give it a little spritz with rubbing alcohol, wipe it down, and make sure that all that excess residue from sanding is off of there. I found a free file in Cricut Design Space that says bloom where you are planted, and that was the one that I specifically wanted to put something that had to do with blooming or growing, where you're planted, because it was a floral design. And so I am just filling in some 3-inch circles, and I'm going to put the words over the top of the circle. That way I can see what it's going to look like on my keychain. I also cut a little circle smaller than the 3 inches, thinking that maybe I would put it on the back side of the keychain or maybe on the bottom of my tumbler, and I decided not to use that one. So although I cut it, I don't actually use it. I'm going to use these same words in a bigger size for my tumbler as well. So I'm going to apply these to my 3-inch keychain blank that has the glitter, the UV resin glitter on the first layer. And then over the top of this, I'm going to apply thin viscosity from CCDIY because I want a nice smooth finish. And oftentimes my UV resin has a bumpy finish to it, so I never have quite mastered that. After I get this resin smoothed on and pop any bubbles with my torch, I'm going to just let it sit for about 24 hours and then I'll be ready to apply the hardware. For both the tumbler and the pens, I used glitter glue from the Crystalac company to apply my glitter, and then I let it sit for about 3 hours and then sprayed it with polyacrylic spray before applying my first layer of epoxy. This Smitten from PDB Creative Studios is a chunky mix, but it has fine glitters in with it as well. The chunky glitters have, like, there's little stars in there and some little pieces that will poke up if you don't hold your bottle up high and then drop it so the glitter lays flat. If you hold your bottle too close to the object that you're trying to sprinkle, you're going to have big shards of glitter sticking up everywhere. So make sure you get those laid flat before you try to apply your epoxy. For the pens, I like to epoxy them while holding them. It doesn't matter if it's my first coat of epoxy or my third coat. I take the pens out of the little foam insert that has the pen holders, epoxy them, and then put them back into the insert. For my tumbler, because it's the chunky glitter and I want to make sure I get the littlest amount of micro bubbles as possible, I hold the tumbler to apply that first coat just to make sure that it's not too thick, not too thin, and I can actually see if there's any bubbles. And then I'll let it spin on the turner and then come back the next day and apply one more coat of epoxy if necessary, or just give it a slight sand, and then I can apply my vinyl. This tumbler did need a second coat before I decided to sand it. So this is after 2 coats of epoxy. So I sanded it and now it's ready for vinyl application. I like to apply my vinyl over the seam to kind of hide it, and this one was pretty easy to line up because it had the seam, so I didn't worry about thinking it was crooked. When I applied my little grid transfer tape to my vinyl, I make sure that I have those letters lined up on the grid, and then I use the lines on my grid to line up with the vinyl seam in my tumbler and then lay it flat. And then your words line up perfectly. So as long as you have them lined up on if you're using the transfer tape that has the grids, and then you have a seam or a straight point that you can eyeball on your tumbler, then you should be able to line it up with no problem, and then there's no redos. I had a couple of little wonky bubbles in that letter B on my vinyl that I had to poke down and flatten out, and then this tumbler was ready to seal with quick coat, and I let that sit for about an hour, and now it's ready for its very last coat of epoxy. I put a total of 3 coats of epoxy on these pens, so this is their final and third coat. I sanded after the second coat, so I'm applying off the turner and then I will put them right back in the turner and let them cure overnight. I am now ready for all the hardware, so I keep all my pen hardware in a little container so that it doesn't get lost, and then grab my hardware for my keychain, and I'm ready to put everything back together. I think I got this little jump ring keychain thing from Michael's. It could have been Amazon. I'll check and see where I got that. I didn't like where the little clasp, I switched around the order. So I want the little claw hook to attach to the spiral ring and then attach to my keychain blank. So I just removed the ring and then I switched it around. I put that at the bottom instead and attached that to my keychain blank, and then tightened everything up and then hooked it onto my little heart keychain. And then whoever gets this can switch around the order if they choose to. They could just use that little claw to switch back and forth. And here is the finished result of all 3 items. So the tumbler turned out super pretty, sparkly, only one color glitter, one color vinyl, and then over the patterned vinyl. So simple and pretty. And then the keychain, you're only putting glitter and epoxy on one side of that keychain and then attaching it to the jump ring, and then your pins with the vinyl, and then only one color glitter over the top. So these were really simple projects to make. It took hardly any time at all. You can make these quickly in a weekend, give them as a gift to a teacher, wink wink, or as like a baby shower gift, change the words, whatever. Have fun with it. And please ring the bell, like, and subscribe if you enjoy the content that I am producing. And thank you so much for your support.